Hey there, welcome to today's video. We're going to go over the best training split if your goal is muscle hypertrophy. Let's talk about what muscle hypertrophy is. Muscle hypertrophy essentially is you increase the size of your muscle cells, usually kickstarted by resistance training and overloading your muscles. Your muscles have to adapt to the load that you're placing them under, and gradually they adapt to that resistance. And so you have to increase the resistance, whether it's you actually increase the resistance itself, or you increase how many sets you're doing with that exercise, or you increase how many reps you're doing, or perhaps you just increase how often you're hitting that muscle group that week. And as your muscle cells adapt to the load, you're essentially increasing the size of the muscle fibers. So in short, muscle hypertrophy is when you are increasing the size of the muscles based on the amount of resistance or the amount of load that you're putting your muscles under. They have to adapt to that load, and therefore they would grow. Now, when we discuss the best training split, we need to also determine what our goals are. Not just your goals, but how much time we have a week, how many times we can hit those muscles a week, what our calorie intake goals are, whether we're cutting or whether we are in a surplus or whether we're maintaining. Because if we're cutting, our training has to change, and if we're in a surplus, our training is also different again. And now the caveat of this is there really is no best training split. It's what training split is optimum for you, and what works for you may not work for me, and what works for me may not work for somebody else. So I have 6 factors that I would go with to determine what split would work for me. First of all, my goals. So am I maintaining? Am I trying to increase muscle size? Or am I just trying to, lose some extra body fat? Another factor I have to consider for myself is how much time in the week do I have to training. I'm a full-time father. I have a full-time job. I also work shift work, so my schedule goes from days to afternoons, back to days, 2-week intervals. So it's difficult for me to have a specific time of day for training, because there's some weeks where I'm actually sleeping during that time period because I'm just getting to bed, or there's other times where I'm just waking up. I need to look at what my recovery will look like that week. As I mentioned, I have a busy lifestyle, much like most of you do, so it depends on what recovery looks like that week. I need to make sure that I'm as recovered as possible before I can hit those muscle groups again. And for me, I have to wait beyond 48 hours. So if I work out my upper body on Monday, I can't work out my upper body until Thursday, or I get into overtraining. And overtraining, as some of you may know, you work backwards. You lose your strength. You lose the ability to move the weight or the resistance as freely as you would if you were recovered. And you end up potentially with impingements, injuries, and a lack of motivation, frankly. Another factor that you need to consider is your experience level. Are you a beginner? Are you an intermediate? Or are you advanced? If you're a beginner, your training will be more basic. You don't have to go all the way to failure or past failure, whereas if you're intermediate or experienced, then you need to find ways to go beyond failure in order to get additional muscle growth. A beginner, it's not as hard to gain muscle mass as it is if you're an intermediate or an expert. And then once again, calorie demands also is a factor. So if I'm in a cut, I'm going to reduce my volume, whereas if I'm in a surplus, I can increase my volume because I'll have the extra calories to use to push me through my workout. Or even if you're at maintenance and you're maintaining, you'll have the calories you need in order to push through your workout. Whereas if you're in a calorie deficit, you have a lack of energy because you're intaking less calories. So therefore you can't do as much volume as you would like to do or as you're used to doing as you're cutting your body fat. My last factor I would have to consider is what resources do I have? And depending on what resources I have will depict what training split I'll do. So do I have access to a gym? Do I have home workout equipment? Or am I looking at just body weight training? So for me, I have a home gym. If you saw my previous video, I have a Bowflex in there. I have some dip bars, pull-up bars, free weights. I have resistance bands. I have a physio ball and a weighted vest, all ways to add stimulus to my muscles. So for me, my resources may be limited, but I can still provide my body with the stimulus, or my muscles, with the stimulus needed in order to build muscle. So for me, based on the fact that what I do Monday, I can't touch till Thursday, and what I do Tuesday, I can't touch till Friday, a 2-day split makes sense for me. Shoulders and chest have to be worked out on the same day, because if I split those up, I can't work them one day after another, because then my delts, my front delts, anterior delts, have not had a chance to heal before hitting them again with chest. Or if I do chest first on Monday and I do shoulders on Tuesday, my anterior delts have not rested since Monday. And with the work that I do at work, those shoulders would be overworked. It wouldn't take long before I start having discomfort and a lack of strength in my shoulders. I also like to do supersets and circuits. So if I'm doing a pushing movement, I like to do the antagonist, which is the pulling movement. So if I'm doing a push, I will then immediately, right after, in a superset or in a circuit, I'll do the pulling motion. So for example, on my upper body 1 workout, so I'll do a vertical push with a vertical pull, and then a horizontal push with a horizontal pull. So let's go over what type of training splits there are. So as I explained, I do a upper-lower split. So I do a 2-day split. I'll do upper body on Monday and Thursday. I'll do lower body on Tuesday and Friday, leaving Wednesday for a recovery day. I'll also do core on Wednesdays as well. There are other splits out there. There's the full body split, where you can hit your body 3 times a week. You can do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. As I said before, that doesn't work for me, because I can't do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's not enough time for recovery. I could do full body twice a week, Monday and Thursday, but then I wouldn't feel like I was in the gym enough. The brain would be telling me I need to get to the gym, and then I'd be more tempted to overtrain. There's also the push-pull leg split, where one day you do push, one day you do pulls, and then the last day, the third day, you do legs. But if you wanted to do 2 of each a week, where you're doing 2 pushing, 2 pulling, 2 legs a week, you'd have to have 6 days set aside in that week so you can hit every muscle group twice. For me, 6 days doesn't work. It's too much time in the gym. I want to keep closer to that 4-day split or a 2-day split, so I'm only in the gym 4 or 5 days a week. One of the 5th day, one of the 5 days would be a recovery day. Another split would be a push and a pull split. So your push day, you would include pushing leg movements along with your pushing upper body movements, and then you can have a day off if you want, or the next day you can do your pulling movements. Pulling leg movements like hamstring curls, Romanian deadlifts, and then your back and your biceps. And then you can have a day off and then repeat the process, and you can hit that cycle as many times as you want a week, or as many times as you can a week, based on what your recovery would look like. So that could be an option, and that way you're doing full body push and full body pull. And then similar to upper body and lower body, in my case, where I do circuits with agonist and antagonist muscle groups, is you can actually do an antagonist and agonist training. So one day you can do back and back and chest. Those would be the opposite and opposing muscle groups. But when you're doing back, you would work on your horizontal plane. So you'd be doing your rows. And when you hit shoulders, which are vertical movements, on a separate day, then you would hit your vertical pulls. So your pull downs, your pull-ups, your chin-ups, etc. And then when you work legs, you'd obviously superset or alternate set the hamstrings with your quads. So for example, you would do a set of leg curls, either right away do a set of leg extensions, or you can rest and then do leg extensions. So the difference between a superset and an alternating set. It's a superset you do right after with very minimal rest. And an alternating set is you do a set, you rest, then you do the opposite muscle group or a different muscle group with a resting period in between. Leave in the comments below if there's additional training splits that I didn't mention that maybe you do. But basically there's the full body, there's the upper lower, there's the push-pull legs, there's the full body pull, full body push, and then there is the agonist-antagonist training. And then there's variations throughout, so you can focus on tempo work. So there's all kinds of different types of training you can do within your split, but I don't want to get into too much of that today. I want to just discuss what the optimum training split looks like. And with my upper lower training split, there's obviously going to be pros and cons. So the pros are it allows me to go into the gym and do resistance training 4 days a week, allows me sufficient rest, allows me sufficient overload, and limit my injuries. The cons are volume. You'll see in my workout later today that I walk you through that I'm probably going to run out of time. And so my accessory movements end up paying the price because I do my big compound exercises at the beginning of my workout in a circuit formation. And then if I run out of time, it's my accessory movements that end up getting left out, or I end up doing fewer sets, or I end up rushing through them. So there's always gonna be pros and cons of each training split, and that's where the optimum training split comes in. Which one works best for you? Which one allows you recovery? Which one allows you growth? Which one is fun for you to do? It's very important when you're training that you need to have fun, because if you're not having fun, you're not gonna stick with it. So when you train, find ways to have fun. If that means after 8 weeks, you switch up some of your exercises, maybe your accessory exercises, because you get bored, go ahead and do that. Try to keep your compounds relatively the same. Push through them, learn the movements, progressively overload on those compound exercises. And if you do get bored by chance on your compound exercises, change the grip or change the variation. Do whatever you have to do in order for you to have fun and still get the results that you're looking for.